Welcome to the City and County of Denver's Electrification Feasibility Report training. This training will be specific for domestic hot water installers. Prior to watching this video, you should have already been granted access or requested access to the EFR tool online. And if you have not done so yet, please go to denvergov.org and look up the Electrification Feasibility Reports section of the website. And on the website, you'll find a link to request access to the tool.
Okay, let's get started here. The first step would be signing in to our account. And once we're in, we're going to see these apps over here. We want to go to the Denver Commercial Electrification app, and we're going to click on Buildings. Now in here, it's important to note that you'll see a list of buildings that should all show up for your specific company. And if you don't see it in this list, we want to make sure that we search for it before we create a new building. In very rare circumstances, you might need to create a new building. But for the purposes of this demonstration, we're just going to select one of the existing buildings that shows up in our list because we already have been working with them, we've created the building, and we're now ready to get in and create an EFR. So for the demo, I'm going to select this building right here, and I'm going to click on the little eye view icon. And now I can just see some of the general building attributes: address, total square footage, whether or not the building is air conditioned, and a few other details about the owner. And if I scroll down, you can see down here, this is where your electrification feasibility reports and eventually your electrification projects will show up. So I'm going to stay in this electrification feasibility reports tab, and I'm going to create an electrification feasibility report by clicking on this button here. And you can see the building address is correct. And now I'm going to go in and I'm going to select my contractor name, which should automatically show up since I've already created a contractor under my company. That'll automatically populate details about the company that I work for. And now I'm ready to begin the actual EFR. So let's say today I'm on site at this building, and first step I want to do here is put today's date. You can click on the little calendar. Today is the 10th. And let's just say I happen to know I'm going to present this to the customer in a month. So I can go ahead and throw that in there. We can come back and you can change this presentation date as you get closer to the actual presentation. And this EFR completion date, this will auto-populate once you submit the EFR for review. It's also important to note that at any time during this process, you can simply save and close, and that'll save all your progress up to that point so that you can come back and make edits later. So the next step is pretty straightforward. We're going to come in here and we're going to select building facility type. And this is an office space that's being served. And so let's just say our total building square footage, I don't remember what it said it was. Let's say it's 25,000 square feet. This is really an important step here because the total building square footage does not go here. This is just the area that's being served by the piece of equipment that you're evaluating. And in some cases, you might not know the exact area, and it's okay to just estimate this within, your closest ability. So in this case, let's say it's 5,200 square feet.
Now I'm ready to move on to the equipment that I'm going to be replacing. And in this case, it's going to be a domestic hot water heater that is 40 gallons.
So I'm going to hit this drop down, and you can see there are delineations here for 40 to 55 gallon, 56 to 80, and anything above 80. In this case, I'm going to go with the pink style natural gas hot water heater that's 40 gallons. Keeping in mind this is the existing piece of equipment that's in the location. And again, I might not know what my proposed system is until I've kind of taken this back and done some research or some outreach to some vendors. But for the sake of this demo, I'm just going to pretend like I know all of the information that I need. So for this installation, I've got three options. I want to go with the 40 gallon heat pump hot water heater that's got electric resistance backup. Okay, and then I'm going to move on here. These are my domestic hot water general feasibility questions. These are just a few questions trying to figure out, are there going to be any barriers to the installation, such as space, ductwork, electric capacity, that sort of thing. And if you don't know these while you're on site, take some pictures. Make sure you're getting pictures of the nameplate on the existing equipment, the space that it is housed in, to make sure that there's adequate space for the new unit. You might want to note the exhaust size coming out of the existing equipment, because sometimes these heat pump water heaters will require a 6-inch exhaust duct, whereas you might have a 4-inch exhaust duct in place. You might want to take a picture of the available electric capacity at the site of the heat pump, at the site of the hot water heater, to make sure that you've got adequate power available. You'd also want to make sure to photograph and take note of the available capacity. So you might have to go to the breaker box to identify what the capacity is serving that circuit, to help you answer these questions. So the first question is asking, is there a heat pump replacement option with the necessary capacity? That means, is there a heat pump hot water heater that has the necessary heating capacity to meet the existing load? And in this case, I know that that's a yes. This is just a 40-gallon gas hot water heater. Very rarely you won't be able to find a heat pump unit that's capable of meeting the load. I would say maybe if you're getting up over 80 gallons and you've got some kind of special case, but even the central domestic hot water boilers, even those have products available on the market today for central heat pump hot water heater boilers. So I expect this to be a yes most of the time, and if it's a no, it'll give you a prompt here to describe, but you'll probably get a call back from one of us with some information on finding a piece of equipment that's actually available. In most cases, it should be a yes. The next question is, does the heat pump replacement option physically fit in the same location? That's a really important one. Sometimes heat pump hot water heaters are a little bit bigger than their counterpart. You're just going to want to make sure that, are you upsizing for any reason? Is there any sort of are there new units being added on to the unit? I've had cases where the building has two smaller gas water heaters that it makes more sense economically to combine those into one larger unit. And so if that's the case, you'd want to make sure that there's adequate size or adequate space and capacity to do something like that. So in this case, I will say yes, noting that it's good to take pictures so that you can always look back and answer these questions. You don't have to go back on site or reach out to the building owner again to answer these questions. Is there enough room or a path to duct the outgoing cold air from the heat pump? So this is another question. Ducting the exhaust and ducting the intake. If you need to duct the intake, sometimes the heat pump hot water heater will draw the heat from the surrounding area, so you might want to duct that and pull from outdoor air instead of cooling the space that the water heater is located in, which is a different principle than the gas unit. The gas unit probably just pulls from the ambient air around it. So that's going to be something you'll need to consider. Do you want to duct that outdoor air coming in? And do you need to duct the air going out? And if so, does it need to be, does the hole need to be, does the size need to be increased? So yes, there's room. And then lastly, is there the necessary electric infrastructure in place to accommodate the heat pump? Again, if you don't know offhand, do some research. There are 40-gallon heat pump hot water heaters now. I think Rheem makes a brand that's 120 volt, and so even if you have a standard 120 volt outlet, in many cases you can install a heat pump hot water heater without having to do an electric infrastructure upgrade or increase the capacity. But again, that'll just depend on the unit that you're speccing. So in this case, I'm going to say yes. Actually, you know what? I'll say no here because I want to add those costs later and show you that. So I'm just going to say there's no electric circuit or something along those lines. You might want to note how many. You might want to note some details as to what you see on the circuit. If there is one nearby, what is that electric capacity, and what does it need to be? You might add that note after you go out and actually find a unit that you're going to spec for this location. You'd want to come back here and note what is the existing infrastructure, what does it need to be upgraded to, and then some details as to, like, do you need to pull a new electric line altogether? What are the costs associated with doing this? What is the scope, rather, of doing this, so that it justifies the cost later on that I'll get to. Okay, and this is going to be, these are some technical details. Some of it is regarding the space that the water heater is located in, and then the capacities and things. So the first question here is the water heater itself, is it located in a conditioned space? Meaning, is the space that it's housed in, is it a closet that's heated and cooled? Is it an unconditioned basement or an unconditioned boiler room? Is it sitting outdoor, in an outdoor closet, that sort of thing? So I'm going to say, I can't remember if this prompts new questions. I'm going to say it's not in a conditioned space, but the building is cooled. And does the building have electric heating? I'm going to say no. And this is kind of a confusing one. I think I've linked to, that's just the first hour rating. This is your water heater draw pattern, and in most cases, if you've installed water heaters, you'll probably know what to put here. But if not, I would suggest doing some Google searching and looking up different draw patterns. I think this is just implying the first hour draw. It's a standard in many of the technical reference manuals or ASHRAE. So very small is 0 to 18 gallons, low, medium, and high. And I think that this is, again, just referring to that first hour draw, the heaviest load or the peak demand on that water heater. So I'm just going to guess that this is less familiar to me, but I'd have to do some Google searching to see, for a building of this type, serving spaces of this type, what would that draw pattern typically be? But again, you might have your own method. So just give me your best estimate here. And this is a little bit redundant, but this is this is a 40-gallon tank. That's what it's asking here for gallons. And then here's an important question. Many of our domestic hot water contractors have their own method. They might count faucets or showers to estimate the total annual gallons of hot water that are being used. The way this calculation works, if you choose no, then it's going to run a number based on the space type and the square footage, but that number is going to be, it's not going to show you what that value is. And so if you have your own method of determining the annual gallons of hot water per year, I would highly recommend that you select yes, and then do your calculation, whatever that calculation may be. I don't need to see that. I just need to see what your total gallons are. So I'm going to say, 13,000. And that's an important number, obviously, because that impacts the energy use. So I really would like this number to be well thought out. Then we've got the water heater capacity. This is going to be just your BTUs. I don't know what a 40-gallon is. Maybe it's 50,000. Forgive me if I'm off, but just throwing numbers in here. So you're going to want to put the existing water heater capacity in here, and ideally your replacement, unless there's some kind of downsizing happening, which shouldn't be the case. But your replacement should be able to meet this capacity. And again, this is for the heat pump unit. Now you're asked what the UEF, that's the uniform energy factor. Usually you can find this on a spec sheet or doing some Google searching. A heat pump hot water heater should be above 2.75 up to 3.5, maybe even higher. But you're just looking for that UEF that for the heat pump that you're going to put in. I'll just put 3.2. Okay, now we're on to costs. I want to note that we have replacement gas system costs and replacement electric system costs, and these are important. This is a little bit counterintuitive. What I'm asking for here in this replacement gas system costs, these are the costs associated with a like-for-like gas unit that you would likely install had you not been installing an electric system. So in this case, what does it cost to put in the same size hot water heater, gas hot water heater, and we're going to use that as our baseline when we're comparing the electric costs. So we'll just go line by line here. The first cost is asking for design. Ideally, if you're throwing in a like for like, you're probably not going to have a whole lot of redesign going on. There might be some costs associated with getting the permit. You might have to get some kind of design after March 1st. You might have to get something signed off. So we'll just put $700 in here just to present what we're doing and get our PE stamp for permit. And then permitting costs. This is sort of yet to be determined, which is part of the purpose of this pilot, is to see what these costs come out to be. But let's just say that it's $650. It's just going to go up a little bit in March 1st because it's going to be you're not going to be able to pull the quick permits that you were once able to pull when you're doing a like for like replacement. Now we've got the actual equipment. So what does your 40 gallon let's just say gas. What I get? These are pretty cheap. Let's just go on the high end. Let's say it's $1,200. This is going to be whatever system you would typically include, and please also include your markup. Even though you're not going to be selling this, I want those numbers to vet out. So if you're going to have a markup cost down here in your electric, I'd like you to also include what, you don't have to tell us what your markup is, but just add it to this equipment cost, because we're trying to see what the total cost would be if they were going to go with a gas system, which should include that markup. So let's say it was $1,200 and we're going to take, $400 of that. So let's just say $1,600 is our equipment cost with our markup. And then I've got the installation labor costs. Let's say, one guy on site for 8 hours or 6 hours, something like that. Might be $750 with a markup, might be $1,100. Might be drastically underestimating that value, but and then we have commissioning. This shouldn't be very much because we're just doing a like for like gas system. Basically make sure it's working. Let's just add another $150. Okay, so I'm not really sure if this is super close to what your numbers might be, but for the purposes of this exercise, I hope that was clear. Next, again, we have our electric system costs. So now we're talking about the actual system that we are speccing. I really want to emphasize that I'd like these numbers to be as close as possible. We don't want to get down the road and have to come back and say, oh, it actually costs $3,000-4,000 more than was anticipated, because many of the buildings that we're going to be going into for this program, they're going to be weighing their decisions on this very heavily on these numbers, and so we don't want to come back to them with any unexpected additional costs. So for a heat pump hot water heater, I would expect these design costs to be a little bit more, just simply because we're changing the system type and operation. Maybe I won't include the electric cost, as you see that's down here, but maybe there's some redesign to the actual electric infrastructure upgrade. So maybe I've got to get some drawings made. Maybe I've got to get some drawings for how I'm going to duct this thing. So let's say this is $2,500. That's going to be all of my necessary design work to get my permit, to get this thing through the finish line. That's what I want that number to be. Again, the permitting cost is I don't know what it'll be. I'll make it a little bit higher in this case. And our heat pump equipment costs is probably going to be higher than the gas unit, I would guess. Let's go with $3,500. That's just for the, you know what, I want to make sure I'm including my markup there. So let's make it $4,000. Again, equipment cost plus markup. Now we have our installation labor. I would expect it to be somewhere close to the gas system installation labor. There might be some more specialized, you might need to have a contractor that has some additional training, so maybe your labor is a little bit higher per hour. Maybe you'll need a little bit more time to install it, so let's just make this $1,500. And this is another important one for commissioning. For heat pump systems, I would expect the commissioning to be a little bit higher than a gas system, because I've got a little bit more complicated, a slightly more complicated system that I'm installing. I might need to, set up some setbacks or some sensor equipment. I don't know. For a heat pump hot water heater, I don't think it's as extravagant as a heat pump like rooftop unit, but in any case, let's make this a little bit higher. Let's go at 300 for commissioning. And now this is the one input that is in the electric system that's not in the gas, and that's going back to what we said earlier, where we said that there was not electric infrastructure in place. In this case, there's no circuit. So I've got my engineering drawings paid for. Now I need to actually go and install it. So let's say I'm running a new circuit and it's a couple rooms over. I got to punch through the floor. I got to run a new line. I got to modify the breaker box. Let's say that's $3,200. Okay, so now we sort of have this baseline cost of $4,200 and electric system cost of $12,000. So those are the numbers we want to get to. Again, best to have these as close as possible. And we're on to our next section. This next section, this is our utility billing details. If you've watched the HVAC contractor training, then you can kind of skip ahead here, but I'm going to explain it again anyway. We don't necessarily expect that you'll always be able to find these rate structures, and if you don't know them, please leave them blank. However, if you are able to identify what rate the customer is on, then please populate this if you're certain of what they are. I also brought up in the other video that if you're working in a building that's over 25,000 square feet in the city of Denver, they should be, if they're compliant to their building performance standard, then as of last year, 2022, they should have an Energy Star portfolio account. And if you're able to identify that, please let us know. You can put it in the contractor's notes. What I would do then is I would follow up with that building owner and say, hey, can I walk you through the steps to get into your portfolio manager and download and send me your usage data for your utility bills? That saves us a significant amount of time having to go through the process of requesting that from Excel. So we just kind of ask our contractors, hey, let's have a conversation about your utility bill. Can we have a look at one of them? If you look at one of them, you can tell what the rate structure is. We'll probably put up another video showing how to tell, or maybe some slides in the training showing how to read their utility bill to find out what rate structure they are for both gas and electric. So in this case, I've gone with its large commercial, and its electric rate is actually small commercial time of use. And that does heavily impact the way that the financial end of this is calculated. So again, another thing that's really important to have correct. And then we're going to move on to our contractor's notes. I've already gone in here and I've put in the unit number. So if you didn't watch the other video, I'll explain this again. If you're going to be doing, even if you're not on site during this day, to do an EFR for more than one piece of equipment, it's still best practice to input whatever the identifier is. So if they have domestic hot water unit number 2, or if they have it named as, third floor closet or something like that, whatever identifier you would need, so that if you or someone else, if there's another EFR being done in the same building, I'll show you in a minute, when you save this or when you submit this, you'll be able to see a list of EFRs for this location, and it'll make it easier to differentiate between which EFR you're looking at, because you can see this, you can see what's typed here in the table that shows all of them. So in this case, I'm going to put domestic hot water, it's unit number 2 in this building. I might want to put in some special notes here, breaker is located, directly below the unit. You might put in here, exterior ventilation, if I can spell, to pass through the north wall directly. Just anything that you want to note while you're on site, so that you can kind of jog your memory and help us understand what the scope of work is. So if the hot water heater is located in the middle of the building and it's going to be super challenging to duct it, you'll want to note that here, I think. You'll capture it in your costs and you'll capture it in your drawings, but this is more just added explanation. And after you've done that, the next step is to just select that you've read and agreed to these terms and conditions, and then after you're done, you can scroll all the way down to the bottom and there will be a green button for submit. Since this is just a demo, I'm not going to submit this, but you would want to submit. And if you aren't ready to submit, you can always save and close and come back to this later if there's more information that you need to go and gather. And then once you submit this, what will happen is I will get a notification that I've got an EFR to review. You should get an email notification as it's being reviewed. And then we will follow up with any additional feedback or questions that we might have or changes that we might recommend. And then you'll be ready to take the next step. And I'm going to just save this and close it so you can see what this looks like when you go back here to, let's say I go to my buildings. I want to go back into the same building that I was just in. And you can see now down here I've got domestic hot water unit number 2. That's my EFR that I just created. And then this RTU number 3, this is actually the EFR that I create in the HVAC training video. So just to show you a demonstration here, how I've got 2 EFRs for the same building that I can come in here now and I can view and edit. And that should be all.
And that's all I've got for you. Thank you for watching. And if you have questions, please feel free to reach out. Email us at electrification@denvergov.org. And otherwise, good luck with your EFRs. Thanks a lot.